On June 21, 1582, the most powerful man in Japan was trapped inside a burning temple, surrounded by his own soldiers. He didn't scream, he didn't beg. He walked into the inner sanctuary and performed seppuku asterisk. His name was Oda Nobunaga. To his enemies, a bloodthirsty tyrant who massacred thousands. To his allies, the architect who dragged Japan out of a century of civil war. To history, something far more complicated. Here is what most documentaries miss. Nobunaga did not just conquer Japan with swords. He conquered it with a free market, a professional army, and the most radical dismantling of entrenched power that East Asia had ever seen. He pioneered economic policies that Europe wouldn't theorize for another 2 centuries. This is the story of the man who mixed the dough for modern Japan, and the moment it all burned. In 1534, Nobunaga was born into a minor clan in Owari province, a backwater by the standards of the day. He wore his sleeves short, ate while walking, and had no interest in the aristocratic rituals that defined Japanese power. When his own father died, he arrived at the funeral and allegedly threw incense at the altar instead of offering it properly. The nobles called him Owari no Outsuke, the Fool of Owari. They badly misjudged him. In 1560, Imagawa Yoshimoto marched on the capital with 25,000 men, the most powerful military force assembled in a generation. Nobunaga had fewer than 2,000. Every rational calculation said surrender. Nobunaga ignored rational calculation. He studied the Imagawa march route, a narrow pass at Okezama, and waited. A violent summer rainstorm hit, visibility dropped to nothing, and the Imagawa camp erupted in noise and chaos. Nobunaga launched a lightning strike directly at the command tent. Within minutes, Yoshimoto was dead, decapitated before his men understood they were under attack. The fool had just killed the most powerful warlord in Japan. The gamble wasn't recklessness. It was the first demonstration of a philosophy Nobunaga would use for the rest of his life. The dominant strategy is almost never the correct one. After Okezama, every other warlord saw a military victor. Nobunaga saw something else, a broken economic system and an opportunity. Feudal Japan ran on rice and obligation. Farmers were soldiers in harvest season, and soldiers were farmers in peacetime. Supply chains collapsed mid-campaign. Warlords were essentially dependent on the agricultural calendar. Nobunaga decided to abolish that entire model. He introduced the rakuchirakuza, literally free markets, free guilds. He tore down toll checkpoints throughout his territory, dismantled entrenched merchant monopolies, and opened trade to anyone. This wasn't philosophy, it was strategy. More commerce meant more tax revenue. More tax revenue meant something no other warlord could afford, a full-time professional army. While rival lords sent their farmers home to plant rice every autumn, Nobunaga's soldiers trained year-round. He had turned military power into an economic product. Then came the firearms. The Portuguese had introduced the arquebus to Japan in 1543. Other warlords dismissed it as a curiosity, slow to reload, useless against cavalry. Nobunaga saw a revolution. He imported the weapons in bulk, trained dedicated units, and at the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, deployed them in rotating volley formations, 3 ranks firing in sequence so one gun was always discharging. The cavalry of the Taikta clan, the finest mounted warriors in Japan, were destroyed in under an hour. He was doing something that had no name yet in 16th century Japan, industrial warfare, funded by an industrial economy. He even implemented a standardized monetary policy, the Erazenire, designed to remove debased coins from circulation and stabilize currency across his domain. This is the Gresham's law principle, bad money drives out good, applied in feudal Japan, nearly 2 centuries before the European economists who would formalize it. Nobunaga was not fighting to win a war, he was building a state. But building a state meant destroying the institutions that opposed one. Buddhist establishments of 16th century Japan were not merely spiritual organizations, they were economic empires. Temple complexes controlled vast agricultural land, operated their own toll roads, ran moneylending networks, and maintained armed militias called Sohei, warrior monks who had fought and intimidated secular rulers for centuries. To Nobunaga's modernizing vision, this was intolerable. Not because he was anti-religion, he maintained friendly relations with Jesuit missionaries and reportedly enjoyed theological debate, but because every toll road a temple controlled was one he couldn't, and every armed monk was a private military force beyond his tax base. In September 1571, he moved against the Enryaku-ji, the most powerful Buddhist complex in Japan, perched above Kyoto on Mount Hiei. His forces surrounded the mountain and burned the complex to the ground, every structure, thousands of inhabitants. Louis Froys, a Jesuit missionary and one of the few Westerners who knew Nobunaga personally, witnessed the aftermath. He recorded it with visible horror, the smoke visible from Kyoto, the scale unlike anything he had seen in decades of travel across Asia. It was shortly after this that Nobunaga began signing certain correspondence with a chilling title, Darokutenmao, the demon king of the sixth heaven. Whether he used this consistently or as deliberate psychological theater remains debated by historians, but the effect was the same. It announced that he stood outside conventional morality, that the old rules did not apply to him. Recent archaeological surveys have cast some doubt on the full scale of the Hiei massacre. Later chroniclers may have inflated the numbers to retrospectively justify what followed, but the political message was never about the body count. It was about demonstrating that no institution, religious, economic, or military, was beyond his reach. The free market and the burning temple were the same instrument. Both were clearing the path. By 1582, Nobunaga held roughly a third of Japan. Total unification, something no figure had achieved in over a century, was within reach. And within his inner circle, a man was calculating. Akechi Mitsuhide was one of his most capable generals. Cultured, literate, deeply versed in classical poetry and court ceremony. He was, in almost every way, the opposite of Nobunaga. Nobunaga's system was built on meritocracy and disruption. He promoted low-born men who produced results. He humiliated aristocratic ceremony. He reportedly insulted Mitsuhide publicly. Some accounts say he used him as a footrest during an audience. Others record the nickname kumquat head delivered in front of subordinates. Whether each incident is strictly accurate is secondary to what they represent. Mitsuhide was a man of the old order trying to function in a system that was deliberately dismantling everything the old order stood for. He was not simply personally aggrieved. He was ideologically threatened. In June 1582, Nobunaga was staying at Honnō-ji temple in Kyoto with a minimal guard, perhaps 100 men. He was resting between campaigns, exposed in a way he almost never was. Mitsuhide saw it and moved 13,000 troops through the night. The enemy is at Honnō-ji. Nobunaga fought. When the end became clear, he withdrew to the inner chamber, set the temple ablaze, and disappeared into the fire. No body was ever recovered. Mitsuhide had ended the Demon King, but he had not ended what the Demon King built. There is a saying in Japan that captures what followed. Nobunaga mixed the dough, Hideyoshi baked the cake, and Ieyasu ate it. Mitsuhide's triumph lasted 13 days. Hideyoshi, a man of peasant birth whom Nobunaga had promoted entirely on merit, exactly the kind of figure his system was designed to elevate, crushed him at the Battle of Yamazaki. Then Hideyoshi used Nobunaga's foundations, the free markets, the professional army, the broken religious militaries, the centralized currency, to finish the unification. And Ieyasu, the third and most patient of the three, converted all of it into the Tokugawa shogunate, 250 years of unbroken peace. Nobunaga never saw any of it. The man who built the foundations of modern Japan was killed before the structure was complete by a general who represented exactly the aristocratic, ceremony-obsessed, institutionally entrenched world that Nobunaga had spent his entire life tearing apart. Which raises the final question, and it's the one that matters. Was he a monster or a modernizer? The answer is that the question is wrong. The burning of Hiei and the free market of Rakuchirakuzo were not contradictions. They were the same project. He was a man who understood that you cannot build a new system on top of the old one. You have to clear the ground first. He mixed the dough. It was always going to be someone else who baked the cake. Next, we follow Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the barefoot peasant who finished the job and then went to war with China. If Nobunaga was the architect, Hideyoshi was the builder who nearly brought the whole structure down. That video is here. Subscribe so you don't miss it.